community, maybe for your family, which is if you're a pilot, is not that impressive, but I do know how to throw myself off some cliffs. If you know any 8-year-olds and you're asking them to learn, don't send them to school where it's all worksheets and stress, because there's no way they're going to learn math unless they get time to run around, unless they get time for art.
My name is Bruce Ferguson. I'm delighted to interview you for Environment TV. Zephyr Teachout, running for governor of the state of New York. And let's start at the beginning, the very, very basics. Are you concerned about climate change?
Yeah, I'm deeply concerned. We already have it. It's already happening. And the question is, how much and how much damage is it going to cause? I think everybody had a wake-up call with Sandy, but before that, it's been an issue for a long time. I should tell you that I started when I was 18 years old. I had a job working for California Public Interest Research Group, going door to door, talking about climate change back then.
Wow.
Just the seeds of it at the time. There was just a beginning of an awareness. But now we know the science. The science is in. It's a serious, well, it's already happening. And the question is, how can we slow it? How can we stop it? And then how can we make sure that the people who are responsible for it are paying for it instead of the most vulnerable populations?
Are we doing enough at the state and national level to combat climate change?
We're not even, no. I think everybody knows the answer to that question. We still have people in public office who are acting as if it doesn't exist or it isn't that serious. It is deadly serious, as we know. And so we need to aggressively move right now away from fossil fuels. That's our job. That's our job for our present and our job for our future. That means that, and this is a place where New York can really lead, and that's exciting. I have been talking with folks at the Solutions Project, looked at Stanford Professor Mark Jacobson's proposal for New York State. New York State can go towards 100% renewable. And as governor, it's one of my first acts would not just be to ban fracking, which we can talk about, but to actually move away from fossil fuels in general as our energy plan and move towards solar. We can have so many more solar farms, wind, starting with offshore wind, and water.
One area where you seem to disagree with Andrew Cuomo is on fracking. He's been in office for 4 years. He has yet to take a leadership role in this debate. He says he's waiting for the science. That's one fact. The fact that he's taken $1 million from pro-fracking interests is another fact. Is it possible that the money is obscuring the science for Andrew Cuomo?
Well, that's the only explanation that I can make sense of. Because if you care about the people of New York and the future of New York, you would ban fracking right now. The science is in. Hydrofracking has devastated the areas in this country that it has come to. It's extremely dangerous for our health, for our water, you know, I've looked at the compendium of all the scientific research, and I don't think there's any questions anymore about the science.
You're not waiting for any more science.
I'm not waiting for any more science. And the other thing is on the politics. It's New Yorkers have been brave, extraordinary fighters against hydrofracking. At one point, 4 years ago, I think many people would have said it's terrible, but it's coming to New York. There's nothing you can do to stop it. But this movement in New York, it's an untold story about this powerful movement in New York, which has actually stopped hydrofracking. And they haven't just stopped it, they've also been reaching out to people in New York State, and the polls are shifting.
Yeah.
You now see that a recent poll in the Southern Tier, a majority of people are opposed to hydrofracking. So every day, as more and more people realize that hydrofracking isn't a jobs plan, it's a toxic plan, it's an unsafe plan, we're seeing the population shift. So the best explanation I have is that Andrew Cuomo has been swayed by his big money donors, because otherwise he would come out with a hydrofracking ban right away.
Okay, and that is the chief argument you hear in defense of, well, you hear two things really. Well, you hear we need the gas, and there's evidence we don't because the industry plans to export half of it overseas. And you hear about jobs. And People say if you ban hydrofracking, you're going to be taking jobs away from New Yorkers. What's your response to that?
Well, I had my policy team look into this, and it's just not true. The evidence is not actually that good that hydrofracking brings jobs. They're bad jobs. It's a short-term plan. In fact, I think it's like 1 out of every 800 or maybe 700 jobs is in that industry, whereas 1 out of every 6 jobs is in health or education. That's the direction we should be going. But I'll tell you the jobs plan. I have a jobs plan building on the Solutions Project, and the jobs plan is to invest in renewables. That's good jobs. It's long-term jobs. It's healthy jobs. It's safe jobs. And that's what New York needs. And if we become the leader in renewables, it's not just people from all over the country. People from all over the world will flock to New York and model what they're doing on what we're doing here.
So do you contend then that renewable energy, build out of renewable energy will produce more jobs than fracking?
There's no question about it in my mind. Renewable energy produces more jobs. Fracking is a false promise and a dangerous promise.
You have said that you'd like to see New York move to 100% renewable energy in the coming decades. Is that really feasible with the technology we have today?
Yes. There's Mark Jacobson, who's a Stanford professor, has looked into this and has a plan for 100% renewables in New York State. And as governor, one of the first things I do is do a feasibility study based on Mark Jacobson and the Solutions Project. And so we can start moving as quickly as possible towards renewables. I think we can't afford not to. The costs of climate change in the short and long term, and then the costs of every other source of energy are too high. And the opportunity with renewables is so great that it's one of the great opportunities I see, and I would be so proud to be governor during a time where we moved towards the 100% renewable solution.
Even though fracking is on hold in New York State, many New Yorkers are already being impacted adversely by fracking. We have people who live near toxic compressor stations. Pipelines are planned for cutting up the state all over through state forests, through wetlands, through residential communities. We have toxic, explosive Bakken crude moving down the Hudson River and by rail and unsafe rail cars. We have, and this is the most extraordinary thing of all, we have toxic drilling waste that is so dangerous. Some of it has been refused by West Virginia, yet it's being imported and dumped in New York State.
No, this is a position that Governor Cuomo has failed to take leadership on. There's no excuse for the toxic waste being allowed in our state. It shows that Governor Cuomo is not actually paying attention to the health of our citizens. And it's an area where he can take real leadership and hasn't. And as governor, I would take leadership. There's already a bill to keep the waste out. I would aggressively support that bill, push it through. Because I've talked to people who live near the compressor stations. I've talked to people who've experienced. I've talked to people from Pennsylvania who've experienced what it's like when hydrofracking comes to their own communities. And they've invited me to actually come visit Pennsylvania, and I hope to do that in the next 3 weeks. Because we need, as New Yorkers, we need to understand that this is a real threat to our health. And it's not just, as you said, it's not just the hydrofracking, but the waste that comes from it.
What is your vision of upstate New York if it does not include fracking? People in the southern tier, there are depressed counties up here. You're in a very depressed county right now. What can you offer them instead of fracking?
Well, we should be investing in renewables. In Sullivan County alone, there are 44 different hydro sites that have already been identified that we could start building on immediately. That's jobs. Solar farms are jobs. Agriculture is also really important, and I'm a big promoter and supporter of value add in agriculture, and also connecting the upstate agriculture to the cities, making sure we have better transit systems and distribution systems. But I'll tell you, it actually relates to hydrofracking again, is that fracking is actually putting a damper on agricultural development upstate. And agro-tourism, Because if you own a farm or you want to invest in something that might be an agrotourist destination and you're not sure if hydrofracking is coming, you can't invest in that because it could be worthless 2 years later. So Governor Cuomo's silence in this area is actually slowing economic growth.
Governor.
Thank you so much. Oh, good.
And I'm an independent. And hopefully we can see more of it.
Well, you'll be able to vote for in November if you can't vote in September.
Right.
But this is why stick with our current party.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Are we have to cut it off?
This is really, you know, I mean, I'm not a big fan of this. No, but I'm just listening more. I said, here's worth sticking with. There you go. Thank you.
We should have it up in the next day and a half.
Is this the white car?
Right there. But then what I say is, so I do stick with the Democratic Party because one thing they do is not getting something like this week. So you could go to the parliamentary system. Yeah, well, you know, this is a chance to really put our thumb on the scales. I
That's a call is about my email address.
Okay. So, you know, that's why I stick with the Democratic Party. It is career. Is it relevant? Well, it's too late because you can't do anything about it in Europe. But think about if you were the executive